Got it. Okay, and we're live. Mhm.
I'll call this meeting to order of the Industrial Development Agency. First, we'll have a roll call. I'm going to ask you to start.
Robin Marshallik with the Wyoming County IDA.
Here's, Mark Dan.
Thank you very much. Jim Rotowski, Kevin Zander, Agency Council.
We have a quorum. Everybody's been furnished in the package with the board minutes from November 10th. Give a minute to review them. The idea. Right, we're discussing. If not all, we can vote to approve the minutes. So, all clear? We also have customary.
The financial,
Actually,
yeah.
Financial results.
Yeah, that's correct. So we didn't have a meeting in December, so yes, there's November and December's financial.
Robin, is there anything you wish to?
Okay, well, I'll just say we started out the month of November with 877,720 cash on hand, 1,644,503 invested funds. We brought in some bank interest and pilot lease payment. We had some accounts receivable fees, which are also some of the pilot lease payments. We had some regular month expenses, and we paid our Neisler's annual fee for the retirement, and we ended up the month with 827,753 cash on hand and 1,644,503 in CDs, no change on there. And if you flip over to the back, that is December's. And in December, we show coming in with fees, was also management fee, which is from the BAC and the business center for the management of those two entities. Our expenses in that month, our normal expenses, we've had some membership and publications and insurance fees also that month. We ended up the month with 844,412 cash on hand. And the same with the CD, it's remained the same at 1,644,503 in the balance. Next page shows the operating budget for the year of 2022 through December. So review through that, you can see, you know, we didn't bring in as much in our fees earned as we had hoped, although I do have a few accounts payable that I do have to add in. I'm sorry, accounts receivable that I do have to add in. So it might bring it up a little, but it's not going to be a whole lot. And then our expenses were, you know, a little less than what we thought, only about half what we thought. Our payroll came in about just about even with what we thought, and you know, that's the snapshot for the year.
Line item. Audit.
Yeah, well, what happened was we switched audits, and in fact, the next item is going to be, we're going to bring Joe Keem up from our new audit company, EFPR. And our old audit company, Food Maxic, had prepared documents to send to them so they could see what our, and they billed us $150 for that. Yes.
It's 300,
First, yeah.
150 for IT.
Right.
5 years.
Yeah.
So,
And that's it.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
All right, so the next item, like I said, is to bring up Joe, so just give me a second to open up the.
Because we have a new auditing firm, that has previously met with Joe Kemp from the, and, yes,
Hi, Joe, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Terrific. Are you guys ready for me?
Well, we just finished our first couple items, as I told you in the email there, we probably do, and then you're up next. So,
Just need to get my volume up a little bit.
everyone has a copy of the document that you provided for us. We all
Perfect.
have.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for letting me come in. I'm actually really looking forward to working with you folks. It's brand new, brand new to us, but not new to us. Just so that you know, in terms of experience, I've been the engagement partner on Empire State Development, Wayne IDA, Comida, Wyoming County, Steuben, Irwin, Glen Cove, and Long Island, and Orleans. So I've done this once or twice. I'm actually a retired partner, and part of the benefit of being retired is I get to kind of pick and choose what I like to do, and this is one of the things that I like to do. Chris Johnson, who is the engagement partner, he is in he's part of our firm executive committee, so he's tied up in a meeting, so I'm handling this. If you want to turn to just past the table of contents, in terms of the scope of services, we'll be doing an audit of the IDA, an audit of Business Center, and an audit of the Business Assistance Corporation. The Business Assistance Corporation will be included in the IDA statements, plus there'll be a standalone financial statement for that. To the extent that there are recommendations or control matters that come up, we'll issue a management letter. We'll have a meeting prior to going final on the financial statements to present the reports in draft form, and that's is actually already on the calendar. And then we'll also do the tax work related to Business Center and Business Assistance. The bottom part of page 1 is just who the engagement team is. Chris Johnson, again, he's actually the head of the test department in Rochester, a very seasoned auditor, is the engagement partner. I'm listed as an emeritus partner, just in essence, a retired partner. My contact information is there. Everybody gets my cell phone, so if things come up, that 585-506-5715 is my cell number, and I'm in and out of the office, so the best way to always get a hold of me is via my cell phone. Page 2 is management's responsibility. Basically your responsibilities include maintaining internal control and safeguarding assets and selecting accounting policies and et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the engagement, we will be asked to get a representation letter from management that basically says that everything that that we asked for, has been provided. There will be a designated individual at the entity level to oversee the financial statement preparation and the adequacy and results of the services performed, as well as accepting responsibility for the results of the audit. And I expect that will be a combination of management as well as the board. Engagement objectives on page 3. I'm not going to read through all of this, but basically an audit allows us to obtain reasonable assurance that there are no material misstatements in the financial statement. It is not a test of 100% of transactions. It's a sampling basis, but what it does allow us to do is to provide reasonable assurance on the financial statements. As part of the audit planning, we get an understanding of the internal controls. We don't audit internal controls per se, but we evaluate the internal controls to enable us to generate an audit plan sufficient for the requirements of rendering that reasonable assurance. If there are any issues that come up, we will bring them to your attention promptly. We did already obtain the engagement letter. So thank you very much. The audit, provide the overview of the audit strategy. That's what this meeting is for. Inquire about risks of material misstatement. Really, the big questions with respect to the board is, number one, are there any, hot points that you're concerned about, any knowledge of actual or alleged fraud, and are you comfortable with the compliance with laws and regulations? And absent somebody speaking up about that, I'll assume that that you are. But if there are any hot button issues, you can feel free to either reach out to me either via email or via cell phone, and I'll be happy to talk about those with you. We will communicate if there are any control matters. I came out and met with the team in December, pretty much documented the systems that are in place. You've got segregation of duties to the extent that you are able to segregate duties, and it seems, from my initial assessment, that there's a fair amount of board oversight, which is a good thing. We also worked with management on issuance of the financial statements. There is a drop dead date of March 31st. I think the meeting is scheduled for sometime the second week of March, so that should not be an issue. And lastly, we're expected to maintain our independence with respect to the organization. And if there's any questions or any comments along the way, please stop. I've done this a long time, so I tend to go quickly through you. I'm also in the interest of saving you lots of time. The audit approach, again, page 4, there's a lot of boilerplate stuff in here. Basically what we do is we've already taken a look at predecessor files, so we know what their procedures were with respect to the numbers. I know from looking at the historical financial statements, whether there's been any findings or things like that. I've actually gone through and actually documented your control processes in place and done the required walkthroughs. So I don't expect there will be any significant surprises along the way. And, pretty much what we do is beat up the numbers. We can sit here and say, all day long, look at internal controls, but on entities of this size, it's the best way to audit is really simply to go through the numbers and make sure the numbers are accurate. Our initial assessment of the primary focus, revenue recognition is always a major item, and it's also always considered a fraud risk. But we'll be going through that. Again, you've got notes receivable in place, so looking at the collectability of notes will be a key audit step. Fraud risks, we'll be interviewing. We will be interviewing management. We'll actually and also be interviewing board members with respect to their knowledge or concerns about fraud. And we always take a look at internal control of financial reporting because, again, we don't give an opinion on internal control, but because the audit is done in accordance with government auditing standards, there is that report in the back that talks about internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters. And if control matters rise up to a certain level, they need to be spelled out in that report. Page 5 is just, again, kind of like the plan scope. We'll pretty much work down the balance sheet, looking at cash, looking at investments, looking at the receivables that are there. Some confirmations have gone out with respect to loans, new loans, and loans that were considered to be perhaps riskier. And then we've got all of the historical loan agreements. I mean, Fried was very good about giving us things out of their files. So anything that was in place at the end of last year, we have that information already. We'll also look at, capital assets and then other assets and liabilities, including the pension liability. The IDA is part of the state pension system. And so you'll have a little piece of the pension asset or liability on the books of the financial statements. And then the last thing is just compliance with public authorities law to make sure that, everything that you should be doing, you in fact are doing, that your website has the things that you are required to have, and you're taking the steps that you need to take in order to be in compliance with public authorities law. The page 6 is just the timeline. Like I say, planning meeting is today with you folks. We've developed the audit strategy. We'll go through. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't see because I feed information into software that basically then produces a audit approach that in essence is tailor-made for you. So we've got the field work scheduled that will lead to financial statement preparation. The meeting, I believe, is March 10th. That we'll be talking about draft financial statements, and then shortly thereafter, we should be at a point to issue financial statements. And then after the statements are done, we'll go into actually our tax folks will be handling the tax work related to business center and business corporation. The last couple of pages are just, 2 pages of updated new or recently issued pronouncements. Anybody that's familiar with the Government and Accounting Standards Board, they seem to have gone into standards overload the last few years, issuing standards that for all intents and purposes for many entities, certainly an IDA, virtually all of these are will not be applicable. There was some initial concern about GASB 87 and what that would do. I think the reality is on your pilot agreements and things like that, I don't think you're going to see any real change with respect to GASB 87. What GASB 87 did was say that if you had leases, and those leases met certain requirements, then you needed to basically record a right of use asset and a lease obligation. Basically, what GASB was trying to do is say, if we've got commitments, we want them reflected on the balance sheet. We don't want them reflected in the footnotes as commitments. For things like, towns and counties and cities, GASB 87 has a relatively large impact, but for your entities, I expect it will have virtually none. That's kind of a walkthrough of the plan. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments or concerns. Please feel free. I think you got a good team in place. I enjoyed, coming out and meeting with them. I expect the engagement to go relatively smoothly. I don't think you're going to see. I think every audit time there's a change in firm, there's a certain degree of pain. The pain will hopefully be very, very small, mostly because I think you've got a good team in place and because we've done this a lot. So I don't expect any issues. So if anybody has any questions, please shout them out.
As an appointed or just a citizen of the board, what are some red flags that we should be able to kind of focus on, and perhaps maybe in your experience, what are some fraudulent related cases that have been associated?
Well, from a fraud standpoint, it involves anything that the entities might be doing that it shouldn't be doing. I mean, you've got the revolving loans in place. There's a process in place to make sure that those are all approved. I don't expect there's any issue there. I think you've got a whistleblower policy in place, so I don't think there should have been any issue there. But it would really be more like one of the organizations is doing something that it shouldn't be doing. And you know, from a red flag standpoint, it's kind of hard to really kind of state what something would be for you, but I think, you know, I mean, where something on the face doesn't seem right is, I think, the biggest red flag that there would be. I think you've got some good controls in place with board oversight. You know, you've established a budget, and you know, you see the numbers throughout the year. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest way that the board oversights, you know, the management. But you know, I think at the bottom line is, if something doesn't look right, chances are it isn't right. So, you know, I know there's been a lot of, you know, there's been a lot of historical flack about IDAs and about some of the programs that are done, but you have a process in place that enables you to do everything that you do. So as long as you adhere to that, to, you know, to that, those policies and those procedures, I don't think you're gonna have a major issue.
Thanks, Joe.
At the completion of your audit, if there's any additional controls that we should be implementing, would you make those recommendations as well?
Yeah, that'll be included in the management letter. You know, at the end of I mean, management letter is two, it serves two purposes. Now, if it's something that it's not anything that's internal controls related will appear in the government auditing standards report. If there are best practices or things that have come up that aren't control in nature, then we'll discuss those and put those in a management letter, because that's, you know, not really something that necessarily needs to go in the government auditing standards report. That's really limited to things that are controls in nature or compliance with laws and contracts. But yes, anything that comes to our attention during the course of the engagement that, you know, we think is a kind of a good thing to mention, and we will certainly do that. Mm-hmm. If not, thank you very much. Terrific. Look forward to working with you all, and Robin, thanks that you sent information back and forth. That's great. Just, you know, let's continue the information flow, you know, until we come out, and let's, you know, like I say, I think this should be a relatively straightforward, relatively, you know, painless audit as far as how audits can be painless. We'll make it as painless as we can.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Maybe not.
The next thing in your packet is the investment report. It's all pretty straightforward. Are there any comments?
On the, I'm sorry, on the investment report?
Yes.
Okay, it's in our packet. I don't know if you guys just want to look through it. It does, we have to put this on the website for the parish reporting. And it just gives you a snapshot of where we are as far as bank balances at the end of the year, what the interest rate was during or at right now at the end of the year. There's a couple of them that we've closed. You'll see that they have a zero balance, but I left their interest rate because we did get some interest in like March and February of 2022. And they're no longer there, but that is interest that we received. And then the total at the bottom, the IDA generated $3,748.97 in interest. And then on the back is just, this is recommended by our previous auditors that we have to do this investment, you know, statement and disclaimer. So that's why this is on the back. So this.
I would just add the two CDs that were zeroed out.
Yeah, if you.
Looking at things like record bills.
Smart. Okay.
So can I get I need to get an approval on that. just
Have a
for-
motion to approve the investment.
So,
Favor?
Thank you, guys.
We have a contract. Excuse me, memorandum of understanding. Is that a custom with the Wyoming County Business Center? Maybe Jim, you could just assure everybody aware of history.
Yeah, Wyoming County Business Center is a local development corporation. County is a sole member of it. It doesn't have any employees or any staff. So the IDA staff, administrative business center, the economic development station, entrepreneurship, micro lending, on behalf of the county for $1,000.
Further discussion, if entertain a motion to approve. Work we can schedule.
There's nothing in the packet, just, kind of ask the board, if you want to stick to the second, third day of every month. Well.
It will basically follow the pattern you have to. There's second. Favor?
Aye.
Jim?
Yeah, in your report packet, there's a request for more installed under sales tax. The board had approved. In every project that we've been involved with recently, everyone is experiencing cost overruns of material costs and delays in getting material costs. And so we asked the board saw that if we could up the threshold of available tax exemption for materials. So in your packet, an email, it shows how much further they for the sales tax exemption. We purposely told them to keep an eye on not increasing it more than 100,000. Otherwise, we'd have to go to a public hearing and begin the process all over again, or at least part of it for the approval. So as long as it stays within less than 100,000, we can simply just do an amendment with council. Get this new number included so they get the tax exemption.
The only thing I would add is that we haven't closed on the transaction yet, but that's going to happen today or tomorrow. And this is accounted for, assuming it approves it. So it is just simply increasing the amount of sales tax exemption. People.
Any further discussion? I'll entertain a motion to approve the application. The request. All in favor?
I would add that Harvard Salt indicated yesterday on the phone that they acquired our IDA project. The second item, Mr. Chairman, is a request by Tompkins Community Bank. The IDA is involved with the Alpine Acres, aka East Hill Creamery in Perry, was an IDA project. There was a deed on the part of the bank to kind of consolidate several mortgages into one. So there were several real estate holdings that were mortgaged to make the project happen. Bank is trying to consolidate those all into one mortgage. The IDA is a part of that because of our involvement through the inducement. So they're asking us to join in the new mortgage consolidation agreement. Also, it's going to again help us make sure that we're mortgage make sure satisfactory. It's a very common request. There's no extra increase in mortgage or anything of that nature, so.
There's no benefit being conferred by the IDA. Simply facilitating the mortgage finance. Refund.
Do I have a motion to approve your request?
I'm sorry, I just have a question. So if they're consolidating loans that were outstanding, there were multiple parties involved, but this is all now under Hopkins, is that the or sorry, this is under all now we the top.
I think all of their holdings for all of
Okay,
Well, Bank of Kansas was, I think, the original lender, so they're probably taking them out.
okay.
So, we have to see some of the papers still, but again, from a standpoint of what they're asking for, it's a simple consent.
Gotcha. And it's, the payment's not coming from Alpine, it's coming from to IDA.
No, there's no
There's
payment.
no payment.
No, this is, just think about we're just a party to, there's a mortgage, none of that really changes, but because we have a lease interest in the real estate, they need us to consent
Gotcha.
to the mortgages going on record. The bank wants to make sure it has a superior lien,
Yes.
right? So we give them that by subordinating, in essence, our interests other than our reserved rights under our lease agreements. And that's how that works. And again, there's no additional benefit being provided by the IDA. They burned that off when you guys closed on this deal 2 years ago, I think. And I'm pretty sure that was an MRT, right? Jeff? There was some more tax there and turned burned. So there's nothing left on that. And they probably won't pay MRT here, to be honest, because they're consolidating unless they put new money in the deal. That's how the tax law works. So they're not looking to the IDA for that benefit.
Yeah, we don't have any financing.
I think there's a motion on the floor. You want to close discussion? Right, all in favor?
Aye.
And Jim,
Yeah, like nowadays, the executive director report. It's gonna give you a quick update about the projects that are in the pipeline. Working with an existing manufacturer here in Warsaw, they manufacture squash sports, they've outgrown their building. They have plans to secure a larger space, that can be renovated to meet the growing needs of the business. It's anticipated they're gonna come to the IDA for some incentives, possibly some project financing as well. We're excited to learn in addition to the incentives. We need to help. If we have a IDA cooperation, our courts have a rail siding that can by businesses. Ship product out, which is something. So that the IDA has some role in that regard as well. The Holiday Inn project in Arcade has been through all the planning approval processes, both at the local level as well as the county. I met with the Arcade Planning Board last night, excited about the project. We have not seen it show up on our agenda yet, in terms of inducements, but it's something that I think the board has always had as kind of a top priority project, was to have another branded hotel. So we're been in contact with the company and this phone calls today, but I anticipate that they're working on their application to us. I do know that now that they have.
what was this going on? 3 years?
I would add a couple more.
Maybe. Right, sure.
We're gonna build that business and arcade, a project actually that we helped out 10 years ago. They're outgrowing their building and want to put up a building. So about how we can help them out with some IDA assistance. There's an ag business in Java that's looking at an expansion project. I've mentioned before that one that's ongoing as they look to quickly get the cost of the project. Working with TPI in Arcades, close to $16 million expansion project. They are considering doing that in Arcade. It's an aluminum casting company or doing the investment in Pennsylvania. So I've been bringing people in from the state to talk with them about but the city can do to make sure that if that's the habits here versus Pennsylvania. And tomorrow, we're bringing outdoor site tours, Laura O'Sullivan, the regional director for Empire State Development, the Lakes office. I'm actually gonna have her go meet with this company with me tomorrow, just so she can bring up the sites and states to the project. And then Betty's gonna be part of a meeting later on that day. If any of the board members would like to come sit at 12:30 in the room to talk with the new ESD rep, you're welcome to do so. She seems pretty excited, and I think I'm really excited that she's reached out and said, I want to learn more about Wyoming County. Because they really have a large role. So approval of CFA gravel boards. So I think that's what this is for.
Lunch will be provided. They'll meet for food. I'm also working at an existing company who's shown interest in their credibility. They're currently looking at assessing their needs. So we continue TI Millwright Services, Perry is still talking about doing their project up on 8th Road, Perry, but they have made a lot of progress on that. Then the last one, I know this, here's always talk about this project, but the large dairy processor wants to make covered milk. The project went quiet for a long time, and I thought it was dead, and then just before the end of the year, I was contacted some kinds of other company. They have they've been working with a landowner and have a actual sale land agreement in place. They haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, but they've come to terms in terms of the number. But because Empire State Development having involved with some significant project dollars and incentives, they have this but-for thing that, you know, this project's not going to happen but for their assistance. So they can't sign the sale land agreement until the state kind of gives its blessing of what this might be able to do. So this site they're looking at is in Stark County Business Park in the corner of Sardinia, Erie County and Wyoming, part of Wyoming. So I met with my counterpart in Erie County, and we got on the phone with the ESD head of the ag in Albany. They asked a question about this legitimacy of the project, its people, and they wanted to know, you know, it's real. And then I mentioned we have a board member that works for DFA. He did a little investigative work, and he said these guys are the real deals.
Oh my God, no, I never about
At least I told them that you indicated they had it.
They have, yes, they have that, the numbers are seeming large, that to be able to support mandatory acts. They may have brought those in somehow.
I don't need it. But they're excited about the site. They haven't been here to look at it, but the layout of it, and then it does have a real. That's key for them.
Yeah, that's a huge. Well, market in New York State is still a little bit out of balance. We would, any kind of additional capacity, along with the planners, people. We're there.
That's all I have for report.
Any other business? If not, next meeting scheduled for February 9th. 2:30. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Favor? Okay, let us now turn to